Hi, I'm Annie Sleece, and I'm on the staff at NAMI Delaware. This is part of a discussion series focused on back-to-school community resources. We're talking with state agencies who work to support youth and families in Delaware. But before we begin, I'd like to give you a little background on NAMI Delaware. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the Delaware chapter of the national organization, which is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. There are NAMIs in every state and hundreds across the country. So if you are viewing from outside the state of Delaware, you can find your local NAMI by visiting NAMI.org. NAMI Delaware offers support, education, and advocacy to those affected by mental illness. You can learn more by visiting our website. There, you'll also see other mental health related resources available in Delaware. Just click the Education tab and select Resources. NAMI Delaware is not a crisis response agency, but we do want to make sure you have access to crisis response should you or a loved one need it. So along the bottom, you'll see there is a hope line you may call in Delaware, and there's also the National Crisis Text Line. You can text DE to 741-741. Today, we're talking to Louise Cummings, Interim Executive Director of Supporting Kids. Welcome, Louise.
Hi, Annie. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So glad to see you. Thank you for taking a few minutes of this busy back to school time to talk with us about your work.
Definitely.
For our viewers, can we start maybe with what Supporting Kids is for those who might not be as familiar? And then, of course, please share with us your involvement with the organization.
Definitely. So Supporting Kids is a nonprofit organization based here in Delaware. We actually have a center for grieving children in Hockessin, but we serve throughout the whole state. And we help children and families who have suffered grief and loss. So most of our children have lost a parent or a sibling. Some have lost grandparents or other special people. We see children ages 5 to 18. And interesting statistic, which most people don't know, is 1 in 11 children in Delaware will lose a parent or a sibling by the time they're 18. That's 18,000 children in our state. We are above the national average. So we just want people to know that we're here to help and support you through your grief journey.
Absolutely. And you've been doing this work for how long?
Yes, so I'm an attorney by trade, but I'm also a child advocate. And so I actually started working with Supporting Kids a couple years ago, doing some fundraising to help keep their individual counseling intact and also some of their group programming, and then decided that I wanted to take it over more fully, to run it. So I started doing that in February of this year. And it's been wonderful. It's been a tremendous experience. Love working with the children and families. And it's just great to provide a resource that can help so many people, no matter what place they're at, in their journey. And a lot of people will ask, well, what type of, death? Is it gun violence, or is it's anything? It could be cancer, it could be a car accident. There's also anticipatory grief. If you know someone that is suffering from a long-term illness and will die, at some point soon, we also can help children through that process as well.
Wow, that's wonderful and so important. And that data you shared, I had no idea. That's a really high number. 1 in 11, you said?
1 in 11. And I should just also quote the source. So it's from the Childhood Bereavement Model. And Judy's House is an organization similar to Supporting Kids that's doing a lot of this research throughout the United States. So it's definitely something we don't pay a lot of attention to because we don't really think about it until we need it. But as we know with death, when death happens, it's immediate, and there's a lot of things that need to happen and take place. And it's not something we generally prepare for. So we are here to help, all of our students and children here in Delaware.
That's great. And we're so grateful that you are. So let's talk COVID. It's been, if you can believe it, it's been 18 months.
I know.
Of COVID, right? And so you took on the role of Interim Executive Director during COVID.
Yes.
So how has Supporting Kids been affected by the pandemic?
So, interestingly enough, COVID has really brought Supporting Kids to the forefront even more because, as we know, with COVID, there have been a lot of deaths, unfortunately. And so we only deal with bereavement, which is, physical death and loss. And so for us, we are just grateful to still be here and be able to help our children and families. We're very grateful to Newcastle County. We actually, during the pandemic, got a grant to upgrade all of our technology, which was amazing. So everybody has new laptops with great cameras, and so we were able to do our individual counseling via Zoom or telehealth. And then also some of our group programs that we had to do for a long time virtually. So there was a shift, but we were able to still help our families. Most of our families, just given loss, would rather be in person, as I'm sure most of us would for anything. But we have to make sure everybody's safe. And we do have a hybrid model. So we do have some things we are doing in person and some still virtual. But that was definitely a shift. And it's hard, talking through a computer. You don't have that same energy. You can't feel connection to people. But our staff has done a great job making sure that we can still serve and see children, even if it is, virtually.
Sure. Sure. And I would suspect in some ways the pandemic and the virtual delivery has maybe made it accessible to people who might not otherwise have known about it.
It has. So our center, which was, we've been there. Supporting Kids has been around for over 30 years. The center has been there for about 15 years, and it is in Hockessin, Delaware. So it can be a little hard to get to. Doesn't have direct, bus transportation. And so, one of the things I do want to dispel, because a lot of people think, well, it's in Hockessin, it's in the suburbs, they only serve, richer people or people of a certain demographic. And that's really not true. We serve deaf, knows no race, no ethnicity, no level of financial income. So we serve all children and families here in Delaware. And so you're right, Annie, this gave access to a lot of people that may not be able to come physically to our center, and also helped us just reimagine how we can do Supporting Kids programming better. So coming into, Wilmington, venturing to Kent County and Sussex County, and being able to bring our programs in like where people are.
Right.
I think one of the blessings in COVID is we've really had to meet people where they are, and children and families. And so that has been a benefit for us.
Absolutely. And it's important, I think, for us to focus on the silver linings.
Yes.
If we don't, it's just so much harder, right?
Definitely.
So let me talk a little bit, or let me ask you to talk really about the idea of grief, because I would suspect that's kind of a hard topic. And you sort of already said that people don't really plan for these kinds of things. And so it's not a conversation lots of people are having. Can you share some thoughts about grief, especially when it comes to children? Like what are some of the common
definitely
misconceptions,
yes,
things like that?
Definitely. And actually, that is our core program is Healing Pathways, which is a 6-week bereavement group. And Annie, what you mentioned is exactly what we touch on throughout the 6 weeks. So we talk about misconceptions, we talk about feelings, how to say die, death, dying. Sometimes you just have to say it out loud. People will say passed away or gone to heaven, and whatever you choose to use as your language is fine. We don't actually correct language. We just give you language that may be more helpful, because a lot of adults don't want to say someone died. They don't say the word death. We teach our children to use that word if they're comfortable with it. Children are much more direct than adults anyway. So it's usually a lot easier for them to do that. But a few misconceptions is, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to upset them. There might be an initial where kids are upset or they're crying. I don't want to bring up, dad's name or mom's name. When a lot of times that's exactly who they want to talk about, but they maybe don't want to upset their caregiver or grown up, that they're with, or other people. And so what we find with a lot of children is they hold a lot in. And so we have a great exercise that we do that has like a silhouette of the body, and we have them color in, in different colors, one of our activities, where you feel like where's sadness, where's anger, where's happiness. So they can start to feel in their body where these emotions are, because a lot of times children will get headaches, they'll get stomach aches, they won't feel well, and that usually is a sign of grief. It just comes out in a different way, because what we find is most children don't have the vocabulary, and their emotion kind of vocabulary is limited. So they may know like happy, sad, angry, but what about frustrated, embarrassed, scared, content? So we have a lot of emotions and feelings that we talk about. So one of the biggest misconceptions, and I know a lot of the caregivers that come to our group say this all the time, Well, we didn't know they were grieving, or we didn't think they were grieving, because they may get up and go to school and have a great day. And then they may have a moment, just like any adult, where they have a memory, or something comes back and they remember their special person, and then that makes them sad, or it makes them act out. So, or it can make them withdraw. Some children will put themselves all into their academics or into reading books. Some children will go to art. There's many different things that they will do to release. But what we try to do is help them release verbally. What are you feeling? How are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? Because a lot of times they don't feel comfortable talking about it, because we as adults, quite frankly, we don't feel comfortable talking about it.
Right.
So we don't do a good job opening the door, and another thing is we always try to fix everything. You can't fix grief. You can't fix emotions. Right. Emotions and feelings just are what they are. And that's what we tell our kids. They're not good and they're not bad. They just are. So however you're feeling, just feel that way. And now let's work together on how do we move forward in a healthy, coping mechanisms, different things we can help them with. So grief is difficult. It's really hard. And it's something that will be there forever. I think that's the other misconception. There's a lot of science and different things out there. Well, after a year, after 3 years, your body, maybe physically, your body is sort of over it, as they say. We don't use that language because you never get over it. So we know that grief is really love with nowhere to go. So, yeah, and that's what we try to tell our kids. And we do a lot, memory boxes and just different things where they can pour all of that love. Because if you have a parent or a sibling, a special person that died, that you love, you want to continue loving them. So the best thing you can do as a caregiver or an adult that knows a child that's lost someone is talk about that person. Because trust me, even if I don't want to talk about it. Nope, I don't want to deal with it. They really do deep down inside. They just need to be given permission that that's okay.
Sure. It sounds like you do some terrific programming. And I know you also offer counseling. Is there anything else around programming you want to mention?
Sure. So we have two kind of core programs. One is Healing Pathways, which is our group. And we actually have a group coming up. It's going to be starting October 13th, and it runs for 6 weeks. So it's Wednesday night. That is at our facility in Hockessin. And it's from 6:30 to 8. And it goes right up until the Wednesday, like November 17th. It's the week before Thanksgiving. Okay. And we do that every fall and every spring. And that's really our core curriculum, where we talk about death and dying. We talk about cremation and caskets, all of the things that are hard to talk about, but we really try to give our children an understanding of their grief journey, to let them know that it's okay, that there are other people that are just like them. So group, the 6-week bereavement group is that curriculum based. Then we have one-nighters that have different themes. Okay. So Mother's Day, Father's Day, Grandparents' Day. We just had a back to school night. Some kids get anxious when it's time to go back to school, especially if they lost someone. And that's where COVID has been, a bit tricky, because some of the children, they don't want people to know that they lost somebody, or they're not comfortable talking about it, or they were isolated because they were at home. And now they have to go back to school. And what if somebody says, well, how's your dad?
Right.
Oh, my dad died. How do you deal with that at school? So we do programs for that. We do music in grief. We do yoga in grief, mindfulness and movement. And we really try to gauge what our kids and families want. Yoga has been big. Art has been really big as well. So those are our groups that we run, and that's continuous throughout the year. And then our other bucket is Guiding Pathways, which is our individual counseling. That's one-on-one with a licensed therapist with the child. And then we also do consultation with the caregiver. So my biggest philosophy is you can't have healthy kids without healthy grown-ups. So we try to make sure that we support our adults as well. And really it's from a standpoint of, if they need therapy or help, we can provide referrals, because we don't actually see adults. But what we do is we try to help them understand what the children are going through. Sure. So that they can really, well, when they say this or they do that, what do they really mean? How can I try to help without trying to fix? Because the minute we come in and try to fix it, the kids shut down. So we do, in our 6-week bereavement group, the child attends, and also an adult caregiver attends as well, so that they can have balance.
That's great. That's fantastic. So for those viewing right now, if you have a child who's experienced the loss of a special person, Where would they go for help there, Louise?
Sure. Well, there's a couple different ways. One, you can call us. Our number is 302-235-5544. And you can connect with us that way. You can also email us, and it's support@supportingkids.org. And kids has two D's. So if you just think of like death and dying, then you'll have the two D's. So support@supportingkids.org. So those are the best ways to reach us. Actually, email, you can call, but email is great. We tend to be more responsive. Everybody's still remote, at a certain level at this point. So we'd be happy to help. And we also have survival kits. So if you know a child that's lost a special person, we can provide the family with a survival kit. And it's just different kind of tips and, some of these misconceptions that I talked about, and ways to talk about feelings, and also just understand different developmental stages of grief from children, ages, like I said, we serve 5 to 18, but we have developmental information from 2 all the way up to 18, not 15, 18
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So I have one question
Sure.
Before we conclude, and it's the same question I'm asking every guest we have for this discussion series, and it's really around the idea of back to school. So we're starting another back to school season. This will be our third that will be affected by COVID.
Right.
So do you have any special message of hope or advice for those watching right now?
Sure. Oh, gosh, I can't believe it has been 3 school years, because wow, that's a lot. My biggest piece of advice is, one, for the adults, is grace. And you have to really just take a deep breath. Things can be overwhelming, but give yourself grace. When you're feeling overwhelmed, my therapist actually always told me to take my hand and put it on my heart. Just like feel your heartbeat. Just remember, you're a human being. You can only do so much. And for our kids, I think, we have to let go of the notion of perfection. We've had to shift and pivot to different ways of learning and thinking, and everyone has, different opinions and philosophies. But one of the things that we don't need to do is put more pressure on ourselves or our kids trying to be perfect. They can get to what they can get to. We want to make sure that they're, disciplined, and they have a system and a schedule, because kids operate best that way. But we do have to allow ourselves grace. And I would say just kind of step away from the idea of things being perfect. And when I say perfect, whatever perfect is in your world. Like, we all have an idea of, well, this is how it should be, and we're getting up and doing this, and have you brushed your teeth yet? Did you get ready? There's all these things going on. So just take a deep breath and remember, the kids are going to be fine. They're going to actually learn a lot more, in my opinion, learn resilience and learn how to really be strong through this time. And not everything is learned in schools. Schools are great and they're really important, but there's a lot that children in particular learn by watching adults. So as much as you can, remain calm, put your hand on your heart, give yourself grace, and remember that, you're doing the best that you can.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that important
Thank you,
reminder.
Annie.
Thanks for joining us today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.